Hello, folks. I got an email that I'm going to try to answer for you right now, so here goes. That's Ziggy the dog trying to scratch his ears that you hear right over there, and he's got a cone around his head, so he can't scratch his ears. You'll probably hear that throughout the video. Here is the email I got. Dear Brad, why do you think one should try to achieve enlightenment/realization? In the end, it seems to me like achieving enlightenment is largely about overcoming the fear of death and/or gaining some influence over the dying process. Otherwise, why bother? I've yet to see a religion whose basic gist isn't some kind of pronouncement about death and dying. It's the appeal to the alleviation of the fear of dying that drives people to religions generally, or so I have observed. It also seems that one selling point for enlightenment seems to be happier as a consequence, happy/happier. Yet every Zen master I've ever met, 3 or 4, didn't seem too happy. I did once read about the happiest person on earth, in quotes, and it was a French Buddhist monk whose happiness was measured via EKG or some similar device. Buddhism is indeed a religion in that religions, among other things, require faith. Part and parcel of faith is that one believes something not merely unproven, but something that is rather hard to believe, if not absurd to believe on its face. In Christianity, there are a few such things, like Jesus' resurrection and dual divine and human nature. For Islam, one has to believe Muhammad is the prophet of God to the exclusion of all others, or at least he supersedes all others. I suppose in Buddhism, especially Zen, it requires faith to believe that an enlightened/realized state exists and is attainable by individuals who do the right things to attain it, and further, that practices like meditation will, if done enough and sufficiently, result in an enlightened state for the practitioner. Say the foregoing about Zen is true. Why would I want to pursue it if questions like what happens when we die are not answered by it, or if happiness is no guaranteed outcome of it? How can enlightenment be assured for the practitioner, and if not, why bother with it? I'm generally interested in your answers, etc., etc. These are interesting questions, and they're good questions. Enlightenment is definitely not guaranteed, as the movie title. I don't know. There's a movie called Enlightenment Guaranteed or Enlightenment Not Guaranteed. Anyway, there's a movie with that, something like that title. Anyway, enlightenment is not guaranteed. But what is enlightenment? What is realization? What is this thing that's going to remove the fear of death and all that? Here's my experience of it. When I was in my late teens, I first encountered Zen in the form of Tim McCarthy, who taught a class called Zen Buddhism at Kent State University. This is a story I've told 100 times. I didn't know about Zen, I didn't know about Enlightenment, I didn't know about any of this stuff before I met him and took this class, but I could see there was something about this person that was genuine and that was meaningful. He didn't seem to be anything like the stereotype one would envision if one envisioned an enlightened master. But he'd done this practice since he was, I think he started in middle school, and he was in his early 30s at the time I met him. And continued to do this practice and had worked on it, and he believed in it, and I thought, well, this guy's done this stuff for 20 odd years and he still believes in it and it still makes sense to him, so that's something significant to me. And I felt something from him that I had not felt from other so-called spiritual teachers before. Like, I'd gone to a number of churches and kind of listened to different preachers, and none of them impressed me even a little bit. And then I went to the Hare Krishnas, and the guy there impressed me a bit, but he still seemed like there was an act going on, and it didn't feel sincere. So I felt the sincerity of Tim. So in a sense, that I guess you could call faith, but it wasn't faith in some kind of abstract something like enlightenment or anything, because he didn't talk about enlightenment or Satori or all this stuff very much, because he was from the Soto school of Zen, which they don't talk about that sort of thing very much. And he certainly didn't talk about any, he gave me the impression that he probably believed in reincarnation, but he didn't really. He never pushed that idea. So it wasn't like, "Come unto me, and I will teach you that reincarnation is true, and then you won't be scared of death anymore." It wasn't that kind of thing. Besides that, the way reincarnation is understood in Buddhism is it's a bad thing. This is one of the things that people really miss in the New Age movement and in a lot of sort of Western versions of Eastern spirituality. They think reincarnation is a good thing because they're like, oh, good, I get to live forever. When reincarnation, in the way the Buddhists believe it and the way the Hindus believe it in general, is that it's a bad thing. You don't want to be reincarnated. The goal of this is not to be reincarnated. So when Westerners grasp onto reincarnation, like, yay, it's really missing the point entirely. And the reason for that is the idea that each reincarnation you have, you're going to have to go through the same pain and difficulties that you have in this incarnation. Even if you get reborn as a god, it might even be worse because you get thousands of years of wonderfulness as a god. This is all mythological, so take it as you will, but this is the myth. And then at the end of the life of a god, even the god dies, and it must be even worse to die after 10,000 years of pleasure than to die after, 75 or 85 years of sort of middling good and bad, right? So it wasn't sold to me like that. But I could see that Tim was dealing with life in a better way than I was, and that he wasn't escaping into some kind of fantasy. It wasn't that he had forced himself to believe in a fantasy world that would happen after he died in order to kind of provide himself with some kind of a impetus to get through life, because there's going to be cake in the sky at the end, if you want to go with the Patton Oswalt version of things. Look it up later. So it wasn't like that, but it was a sense of being able to live in this world in a comfortable way and in a direct way. And that's what I was more interested in. Because to me, questions like what happens after we die, well, they're interesting. I won't claim that. There's the dog behind me. I won't claim that such questions are completely without interest to me, because I could sit and ponder it and read books about it and think about it and stuff like anybody else. But the more interesting thing is, what is this? What is this world that I'm living in? Because if your interest lies in what happens after I die, to me that seems to assume that what this is. Like, I got this. This is fine. This is just normal stuff. I want to know what happens after I die, because that's crazy. But this is crazy. This world we're living in right now is bizarre. Why is it even here? Why are we living in this? How is it that I feel what I feel? What is my experience of consciousness about? Why do I feel that when I do that and you don't feel it? And why is this dog shaking and stuff and chasing a ball around? I don't know. A lot of weird stuff is going on in this world, and that's what I want to know about. So the question of what happens after I die is secondary. The idea of kind of happiness or being happier, I think, is useful. I wouldn't say that I saw either of my teachers, either Nishijima Roshi or Tim, as being like happy all the time. They had their ups and downs, and I could see it. But there was a general level of comfort with just living that they exuded that I'd never seen from anybody else. And it had to be a kind of in-person thing for me. I don't think I would have gotten it from books. I think if I would have started my Zen practice by reading books, especially the sort of standard books that were out there at the time I started, I don't know if it would have meant much to me. But now there are some better books, and I write some of them. So maybe it's different now than it was at the time. I don't know if that's an answer to the question, but, that's my answer to the question. And I don't really care so much. You strive for enlightenment. I had a bit of that in my practice, and And once I got there, or once I got some of those experiences that people often label as enlightenment, they were interesting, like really, really interesting and extraordinary, but at the same time, it's not like you get a download of answers to all your questions. You get kind of a general sense of what the answer is overall, and it's just one answer. But as far as trying to get the specific answers to your specific questions, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't. It really doesn't. So I don't know. I don't know if that was an answer to the question, but I'm going to send a link to this video to the guy who asked me and see if he thinks it's a good answer to the question. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe you got other questions. I don't know. But that's what it is. So that's the end for me today. As always, Patreon and PayPal links are below if you're watching this on YouTube. That is how I make my living, and that's how I'm sustaining myself throughout the quarantine and pandemic. And thank you for just about everybody is still donating. And I'm amazed with so much of the country out of work that people are even donating to me at all. So that's great. But if you're one of those people who are out of work or otherwise struggling or worried, don't worry about me. I'll be okay. I got stuff sort of shored up. As long as this doesn't go on for as long as Gavin Newsom says it will, I think I'll be all right. So we will see you next time. If you have any questions or anything, put them in the comments or send me an email. The email address is always below, and we'll see if we can get to them. Thank you. Bye. See you later. Bye.